Hi, everybody. This is Denise Venturelli. Thanks for joining me today with Venturing Out with Denise. You know, our weather in Arizona is getting pretty heated up and our ACs are working overtime. So I thought how more appropriate to have somebody that I've been working with for the last 10 years to come on my show and let's talk about air conditioning. So with that, I want to welcome George. He is with Air-Zona Air Conditioning, Heating, and Ventilation. So George, hey, welcome to my show. Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
How you doing today, Denise? Hopefully you're sitting in a nice air-conditioned office somewhere.
I am. I think it's on 76, so it's working overtime today.
111 degrees for the high today. I would say it's definitely going to be working overtime.
Did you say 111?
111.
Oh my gosh, it's too early. It's only May.
I know we're going to be breaking some records. We've already broke records in April, so I guess it's going to be a continuance of the summer.
Wow, crazy. So George, I know you and I have worked together for a while. I love you and I love all the people that I work with your company. Can you tell everybody a little bit about you and your business?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So there's myself, and then I have a business partner, Pat. I myself kind of manage the service side of it and also perform service out in the field. My business partner's name is Pat Garrity. He runs the installation and new construction portion of our business. So if you were to need a new air conditioner installed, that would be his side of it. And he also runs a 3-man crew. We formed the business back in 2003. He and I both came from the commercial side of our industry and wanted to do something different. So actually started a residential company just to kind of change things up. He and I were both kind of done with the commercial side of it for a while. Now, of course, we're getting back into commercial. I would say roughly 30% of our business is actually commercial now and 70% is residential. So.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Wow.
But we've grown slow since 2003, just him and I we're right at 10 employees now. Two office gals, and then Pat Garrity, myself, and the rest of the crew. Four service technicians and a 3-man install crew. So
that's awesome, George. So your business has grown since you and I started. We teamed up 10 years ago.
Yes, ma'am. On average, we've averaged about 10 to 12% growth a year. So we wanted to keep it manageable because Pat and I are extremely concerned with quality. So we didn't want to grow so fast that we would lose a lid on it and lose our hands off the business that way. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And quality is key. It really is.
Quality and customer service. And I think, you know, when you get into business, it's easy to lose sight of why you went into business to begin with, which is you wanted to make a change in your industry or do something different in your industry. And that's what Pat and I wanted to do. We saw the direction our industry was going on the residential side and wanted to do something completely different.
Right. Right.
We're one of the last companies, or one of the last few companies, I should say, that our technicians actually do not get paid any form of a commission on service calls. And they also don't get spiffed or bonuses based off of sales performance. So if a technician shows up at your house, he's going to give you the honest truth of exactly what needs to be repaired, you know, what you might be looking at in the future, et cetera. So that was the direction we wanted to take the business in.
Yeah, you know, George, I'm so glad you hit on that because I've had both. I've had where they do work on commission and they'll, you know, they could be out there doing one thing and then they find other things that are wrong and you don't know. It's just like a mechanic, you know, unfortunately, they could tell you that something's wrong with it and you just believe them. And they're working on commission, which is, yeah. So thanks for hitting on that. So I know this is a busy time of your year, busy time of year. And thank you for taking the time to speak to me because this is taking you away from your busy time. But what time of day do you begin? When does it end?
So a typical morning, if all we're doing is running, you know, regular service calls, we typically in the summertime try and start around 7 a.m., be at our first call by 7. That does fluctuate if there's a special need. Somebody may need to get out of the house earlier, so we can make arrangements to be there earlier, you know, 5 or 6 a.m. But a normal day, I would say 7 a.m. is first call. And then we run until the calls are all done, until the phone stops ringing and everybody's got cooling to the best of
Right.
our.
Wow. So Saturdays and Sundays as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yeah, we
Wow.
typically, we can get away with running one on-call technician for the weekend, and then Monday through Friday, there's the 5 of us out in the field running service.
Okay.
And the install crew stays pretty steady all 5 days of the week, installing new equipment.
Yeah. So, I manage properties as well. And some of the properties, they have old ACs and they seem to be running like they may be a dinosaur, but knock on wood. I really don't have any issues with it. And then these newer ones that come out with, they seem to always have something going wrong with it. So what is the life expectancy of an AC?
So typical design from the manufacturer is going to be 12 to 15 years.
Oh, okay.
In our weather, because they see a lot of service hours, our air conditioners in Phoenix typically see between 2,000 and 2,200 service hours a year on just the cooling side. So that's a lot of hours. And just as comparison, Detroit on average is roughly 200 hours of cooling service. So you can see the massive difference there. But older pieces of equipment, I don't know if I would go as to say the components are better or worse, but it does seem like the older ones, once they're running, as long as they're maintained and the small
Key.
little, key, as long as the small little components that could cause bigger problems, as long as they're serviced and replaced as needed, I could easily see a system lasting 15 or 20 years, no problem.
Okay. So let me see. My house was built in '01. I've already replaced one unit, but I still have my other unit. And it's doing fine. So
Fingers
I'm
crossed.
probably almost there, huh?
Yep, fingers crossed for you.
Yeah, yeah. So what is this SAIR rating? What is that?
SEER, so SEER is an
Yes.
acronym for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Rating. And then
Okay.
the shorter version of that, which is for our climate, there's also what they call an EAR, which is just an EER rating, which is energy efficiency rating. But our utility companies, APS and SRP, base everything off of SEER rating. So a SEER rating, all air conditioners come with a SEER rating, and that's determined by a group called AHRI. And basically all the air conditioning manufacturers give equipment to AHRI. AHRI puts it through a performance test and designates a classification number. And the reason why they give it a classification number is because there's multiple ways to make up a system. So you have an outdoor unit of a condenser, you possibly have a furnace and a coil in the attic, or if you have a heat pump, then you would have an air handler. And there's multiple ways to match those up. So AHRI tests each and every one of those options, assigned its own unique ID number, and then the energy efficiency rating that accompanies that. So that's basically what a SEER is. And typically the minimum standard is a 14 SEER here in Arizona. And you can get them as high as roughly 20 SEER depending on, variations. But the higher the SEER, the more energy efficient that system is going to operate and save you money in the long run.
And I was just going to say that. So does it save you money to hire the SEER?
Most definitely. The higher the SEER, the more it's going to save you. On APS's website, the last time I checked, I believe you save roughly 6% per SEER point you increase off of your cooling.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
Not off of your entire electric bill, but off of the cooling bill.
Yeah. Well, talk about saving money. What is super cooling? Can we talk about that? Because I'm doing it right now and I did see a difference, but for everybody listening, let's talk about super cooling.
So super cooling, both APS and SRP kind of touch on a little bit, but basically it's the utilization of a programmable thermostat to utilize your air conditioner, specifically your air conditioner, during non-peak hours. And what you're going to want to try to do is, hence the term super cool, you're going to try and bring the temperature of your home down pretty drastically. I run mine at 74. But you're going to want to.
Let me write that down. You run yours at 74. Go ahead.
During the off-peak hours. So anytime off-peak, you're going to run it at least 6 degrees lower than what you can stand on the on-peak hours. As an example, I have mine go up to 80 when it's on peak and then down to 74 when it's off peak. And ideally you would want to stagger that. You don't want to go directly from 80 down to 74. So I have mine go from 80 down to 77. And then an hour and a half later, I have it go ahead and go down to 74 degrees. So you're just trying not to tax the air conditioning system too bad. Give it a break and allow it some time to bring the house down to that temperature. But then you want to leave it at that 74 degrees, or like I said, any 6 degree variation. But I run mine at 74 and I leave it all at 74 all day until we get back to the next day's on peak hours.
Okay.
And each utility company has different on peak and off peak hours. So obviously check with your utility provider.
Yeah. So for an example, I have APS.
Okay.
Mine's from 3 to 8. Okay. So at 3 o'clock, I have mine kicked to 81.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I couldn't do the 74. It was too cold. Sometimes it's just too cold at 75.
Okay. So, that's a good point. I have customers, some of them are actually comfortable at 82. So what you're trying to do is just fluctuate. So instead of 80, 77, and 74, they may go 82 down to 79 and then down to 76. But basically any kind of a 6 degree gap is going to allow your air conditioner not to run for at least 2 to 3 hours during those on-peak hours. And I would assume, so if you're a 3 to 8 p.m., I would guess your air conditioner doesn't actually kick on till roughly 5 or 6. And then it's only running at, say, 81 for a couple of hours, and then you're back off peak. So basically you're trying to either completely eliminate or minimize the runtime of your air conditioning system during those peak hours.
Right. Yeah. And so at 8 o'clock, mine kicks up to 78.
Okay.
And well, I should say kicks down. It goes down to 78. And then at 8 o'clock, it does that. And then at 9:30, that's when it kicks down to 75.
Perfect. Yeah. So and I do the similar thing. So at 8 o'clock, mine goes from 80 to 77. And then at 9:30, I go from 77 to 74. So ideally by 10:30, hopefully, right around the time you're crawling into bed, it should be nice, cool and comfortable for you. Heck, you may have to pull a comforter over you. I don't know, but you're just trying to keep your house cool. And then by running it at, in your case, 75, my case, 74, you're allowing your entire home, the walls, the cabinetry, everything in your home to absorb that 74 degrees for multiple hours on end, which is what kind of helps hold and keep that cooler temperature much longer.
Exactly.
Plus you're doing it overnight when the sun is down and it's easier to shed the heat load off your house.
Right. So well, now it's hot, but when it started getting warm out and everybody started kicking on the ACs, do you recommend super cooling then? Or is there should we just do it when it's 110?
I as soon as you start turning your air conditioning system on, I highly recommend doing super cooling.
Okay.
I don't vary mine at all. So ours kicked in a little bit early this year because the weather broke early. So towards the beginning of April, I kicked my air conditioner on and I run that same program until I am completely done running my air conditioner, whether it be October and unfortunately sometimes.
Yeah. So what about
time?
Excuse me?
I said I run that program the entire time.
Okay. So what about people that think okay, well, I'm working all day. Why am I going to have it at 75 degrees? I'm not even there. Can I just shut it off and then I'll turn it on when I get home?
And you can do that. The only problem is your house is now going to creep up in temperature prior to those peak hours, therefore forcing your air conditioner to run more frequently during those peak hours when utility usage is very expensive. So even if you're not home, I would still recommend leaving it set at that low temperature all the way till, in your example, APS, the 3 p.m. cutoff. I would leave it at that low temperature all the way until 3 p.m. to allow your house to stay as cool for as long as possible prior to having the thermostat raise the temperature up during those peak hours.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is part of your service, George, but do you go into homes and offer tips to the homeowners on how to make their home more efficient?
I would say it's at the technician's discretion, but yeah, our ultimate goal Our ultimate goal is to make people comfortable. And if we see things that, are lacking, i.e. we're in people's attics and we see a lack of attic insulation, we would absolutely suggest that. A big one is a lack of return air, i.e. the filtration portion of your home. Um, Most homes have undersized filter portions, not the ducting. The ducting is usually correct. It's the amount of filtration. So by simply adding an additional filter or an additional return somewhere, you gain a small increase in energy efficiency and allow the system to perform the way it was supposed to, and also allow for better airflow in the home.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about R22. Okay. Cause we hit on the SEER rating.
Sure.
R22, it's still out there, right? So
Absolutely.
what happens? Someone has a unit, it's R22, because we kind of like weeding those out, right?
Yes, the EPA is officially,
Yes.
start of
Yeah.
2020 was the end of production of a new R22 refrigerant. Now, we still have a ton of availability of any recycled R22. There are also multiple aftermarket replacements for
Hmm.
R22. So just because you have an R22 system does not necessarily mean that you have to run right out and replace it. They can absolutely still be repaired. Repairs would most likely be more expensive, but we still certainly have access to the refrigerant and multiple aftermarket options on that refrigerant. So it's similar to what the EPA did with vehicles, 30 years ago. They wanted to do away with R12, so they ended the production of it. R12 was still available. It just became very expensive to get a hold of. So very
Okay.
similar.
So if I have a unit that's an R22 and they're no longer available, how do I get it repaired? Can it still be repaired?
Most definitely. So if you had
Okay.
let's say you had to get into the Freon circuit for any reason, whether it be a compressor or a metering device, whatever, as long as it wasn't a burnout, any major problem with the system, most of the time that R22 refrigerant can be reclaimed and then reinserted back into your system without any issue.
Right.
Um, you have a major failure where the Freon cannot be reused, you would reclaim that. That would get sent to a recycling plant. And then a couple of options. You can put in an aftermarket replacement for R22, which would be less expensive, or we could still get the R22 refrigerant and replace it with that, which would be a more expensive option.
And it is expensive, huh?
Most definitely.
Charge what, by the pound?
Yeah, everything's by the pound. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I know that you talked about how you're different. Some companies work off of commission. I know that you don't. Is there anything else different about your company from other AC companies out there?
Absolutely. I would say, because we've remained small, you still have access to both the owners. So Pat goes out and measures each job himself personally. He's on the job site every morning to make sure that the install crew is doing, what they're supposed to be doing, and he's there at the end of the job. I myself still outrun service calls. If a customer has a problem or a complaint or just even a question, they can absolutely still get a hold of the owner, one of the two owners at any time. That's not an issue.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of important. I think people like knowing who they're dealing with.
Yeah. So, George, for everybody, how can someone get a hold of you
So
or someone?
we have a website, which is great. They can actually schedule a service call on the website or schedule an estimate on the website. The website is air-zona.net, real simple. Our office number is 602-943-2166. If you decide to call in, you'll speak with a lovely lady named Martha, who is just fantastic and a very pleasant individual to deal with.
Yes, amen to that. So I also want to mention if you Google your business, okay, you have a 5-star rating. And I'm talking close to, I don't know, there was a lot of reviews on there, over 200 reviews, I think. But 5-star, that's hard because usually you get a 4.5, maybe 4.7, but yours is 5-star rating. I love you guys. Thanks, George. Thanks for coming on. Is there anything else you want to add before we end?
No, I want to give a shout out. Pat and I have grown the business, but the reason you mentioned the 5 stars, that's because of the wonderful people we have working for us. We equate that to a lot of good training and just weeding out and doing a lot of good hiring. And Pat and I most certainly couldn't do this by ourselves. And Pat and I are both confident that no matter who got sent to anybody's home or place of business, it would be somebody that would be super trustworthy and great. And like you said, the rating proves that. So
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, George. Thanks for taking the time out. Now go out there and help those folks that need to get their house cooled down.
I'll do it. Thank you so very much.
All right. Thanks, George. Have a great day. Thanks.
You too.